Good afternoon. I always like to give a couple seconds because sometimes it takes a few seconds for folks to actually get logged in, even if they were in the queue. I am Margo Wu-Tan. I run my own strategic consulting firm called MXG Strategies, which supports organizations' ability to achieve their mission through project communications and policy development and strategy, nutrition science, partnership and coalition development, grassroots mobilization, and fundraising. I'm also honored to be an adjunct faculty member at the Department of Health Studies at American University. The department offers undergraduate and graduate programs in public health and health promotion and nutrition education. And on behalf of our chair, Dr. Stacy Schnelling, myself, and other faculty, I welcome our speakers and our listeners and participants, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation this afternoon. It's hard to get things done in Washington, as many of you know, and as students are learning. Right now, there's an open window to strengthen national food and nutrition programs through the Farm Bill. Every 5 years, the country takes a close look at national food and nutrition programs, along with a number of farm programs. It's called the Farm Bill, but the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, is one of the biggest components of the Farm Bill, and it's our country's largest and one of our most effective anti-poverty and food security programs. So SNAP, as well as a number of important nutrition programs, are under review right now by policymakers and advocates. So there's a lot of opportunity here. We're going to talk about those opportunities today, also some of the challenges, and we're going to encourage you all to get involved. That policy making sometimes can seem like a far off, unattainable thing to be a part of, but your voice really does make a difference. And we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can get engaged today. We encourage your participation today. There is a chat box where I see some people have already introduced themselves. Please introduce yourself. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Share resources, ideas that you have through the chat. And if you have specific questions for our panelists, you can add those anytime during the conversation, and we will get to them around 2:45 or so. So my colleague, Christy Lunsford, is here with us as well, and she'll be monitoring the chat if you have any technical issues, but hopefully all will run smoothly. So I'm going to invite Jacqueline Schneider to join me first out of the panel. We're going to start with a quick intro about what the Farm Bill is. Jacqueline, you've probably gotten this question lots of times, and I can think of no one more knowledgeable than you to have here with us today to talk about what the Farm Bill is. Jacqueline was a key staff member and deputy staff director for the Senate Agriculture Committee. I don't know if I'm dating you, Jacqueline, to say for almost 12 years.
That's okay. I'll own it at this point.
She is now a partner at FGS Global. And thank you so much, Jacqueline, for being here today. It's so great to see you and have you here virtually with us at American University.
Great to see you too.
So let's just jump right into it. And can you give us, a broad overview of the breadth and the magnitude of the Farm Bill? How much money are we talking about? What kinds of programs is the Congress considering right now under the Farm Bill?
Sure. Thanks, Margo. And thank you all for having me here today. I'll date myself even a little bit more and say this is the fourth Farm Bill that I'll be working on, albeit from a different chair this time. So we've seen lots of different iterations of what a Farm Bill can look like. But the basics of what a Farm Bill is an omnibus bill that brings together a whole variety of different policies that really support the food and farm infrastructure are across the board. So Farm Bill is a little bit of a misnomer here. It does include farm programs, commodity support programs, crop insurance, things that we generally think of as traditional farm programs. But it's also the largest federal investment in private lands conservation funding in the entire federal government. It, as Margot mentioned, includes provisions for not only the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is, sort of the core nutrition assistance program for the American population of all ages, but also programs that help support food banks, provide nutrition incentives for people who are low income to try and support healthier diets. It also includes support for nutrition education. Outside of the nutrition space, you also have programs related to rural development, rural infrastructure, energy provisions. You might hear folks refer to the Farm Bill as a Swiss Army knife sometimes. It has 12 titles that are all interrelated because they support rural development, agriculture, food, and nutrition policy. But sometimes some very interesting and disparate things like there's policies related to hemp production that we put in the last Farm Bill. So very, very varied infrastructure supporting a whole variety of different programs. We do tend to think about Farm Bills both in a 5-year time period because it's authorized every 5 years, reauthorized every 5 years. But when we're talking about budgets and you hear members of Congress or staff talk about the Farm Bill funding, they generally talk about what they call the baseline, and that is on a 10-year cycle. So the Farm Bill is about $1.4 billion over 10 years for all of the programs within the Farm Bill context, those 12 titles, give or take. The largest piece of the Farm Bill is the nutrition assistance components. SNAP represents about 84% of what the current Farm Bill baseline will be as members start drafting this year. The Farm Bill is scheduled to expire on September 30th of 2023. But if you talk to most folks who are engaged in this policy, you'll probably hear folks say, that's the target, that's the goal, that's the expiration. But it's most likely probably going to be either later in 2023 or into 2024 before the bill will be completed. So it is up for authorization. The writing is going on right now. So there's a great opportunity to influence policies that support anti-poverty programs, nutrition assistance programs, really make a difference in those components, but also defend those programs from potential attacks or reductions through this process, because there are members that are seeking changes that would potentially weaken the program's ability to serve the folks in need.
It is just a huge bill, amazing undertaking, and daunting to try to understand the full scope of it. Can we dig a little deeper into the nutrition title? You mentioned SNAP as one of the key programs that's under consideration. What are a few of the other components of the nutrition title that are in play?
Sure. So SNAP, as Margot and I both mentioned, is sort of the root, the anchor of the nutrition assistance title. It does represent the largest component and a significant amount of funding, especially since it was the nutrition standards that are in place that back up the funding level were recently updated through an update to what they call the Thrifty Food Plan, which did increase the amount of benefits that individuals get in SNAP. But setting SNAP aside for just a moment, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is the primary funding source for food banks, is a part of the Farm Bill as well, and will be under consideration, both the funding levels and some of the structure. There's been some efforts to improve the relationships with farm to school, with local farm programs and that connection to local agriculture, as well as some of the resources that are available through TFAP, as the Emergency Food Assistance Program. There's also also the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Assistance Nutrition Incentive Program, GUSNIP, which has gone through a couple different names. So if you know it as Finny or Double Up Bucks or a variety of different names, it is the SNAP version of incentives to help with fruits and vegetable consumption. And that's an area that I think you'll see a lot of attention as well, because it is an area where there's a little bit of food as medicine discussions, and how do we encourage participants on SNAP to consume more fruits and vegetables, which are under-consumed across the American population in general, but certainly on folks that are receiving SNAP as well. There's also programs that support seniors, the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, the Farmers Market, Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Incentive Program, which is similar to GUSNIP, only specifically targeted towards seniors, as well as SNAP Nutrition Education, which is sort of the premier program for nutrition education directly related to the SNAP program. And I would imagine that could see a good amount of attention on, structure and how the program is working and connections to other things like the incentive programs as well.
A lot of nutrition in this farm bill. So let's bring in the rest of our panel. We are lucky to have Ty Jones-Cox, who is the Vice President of Food Assistance at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Ty, was interested to hear that you started as a legal aid attorney representing clients in hearings and other dealings with the Virginia Department of Social Services. Thank you so much for joining us today and for all your work on food assistance and for testifying before Congress on behalf of low-income families last week. We also have Karen Ahrens with us, who is a longtime friend of mine and advocate. She has been a tireless advocate for food and nutrition security, and she is now the Director of Legislative and Government Affairs at the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, who is a key advocacy player in the Farm Bill nutrition space. And we also welcome Sarah John, who is a senior policy scientist at the Center for Science in the Public Interest and who has worked on SNAP and other food assistance programs in her role at CSPI and elsewhere. So thank you all so much for joining us here today. Ty, why don't we start with you? What are some of the key opportunities to improve nutrition security in this current Farm Bill?
Thanks, Margot, and hello, everyone. So really quick, just to lay out, the Center is a nonpartisan research and policy institute, and we focus on advancing federal and state policies to help build a nation where everyone, regardless of their income and race, sexual orientation, gender, et cetera, has the resources they need to thrive and share in our nation's prosperity. So a piece of that for the food assistance team is really the focus on the federal nutrition assistance programs. And then for us right now, and a big focus is SNAP. So I would say our biggest focus is strengthening and improving SNAP. And I think where we see the biggest opportunity there is really when we think about access, and then improving the benefit and the benefit amount. So when I say access, I mean expanding eligibility to groups who, while food insecure and income eligible, are excluded from the program. And that includes a pretty large, different groups, including anyone from who are subject to time limits. So that's adults who are not employed or underemployed. They do not have children in the home and they are working less than 20 hours. They only can get SNAP for 3 months out of 3 years. Individuals with drug felony convictions, our fellow citizens in Puerto Rico have a block grant program that isn't adequate, certain immigrant populations. So there's a lot of opportunity there to reach out to other groups who need to have access to SNAP. And then improving the benefit amount itself. So SNAP is really critical, and it's our largest anti-hunger program, but families still sometimes struggle to purchase food. And so we do a lot of work on making sure that the benefit amount itself is adequate, and that will be a place where we can allow families to be able to purchase more healthy foods, because we know usually eating healthier can cost a little more. And then we think about just streamlining the process of actually receiving SNAP. So those are our three there's an access, piece, there's an improving the benefit amount piece, which is important, and then like how people encounter the system and making sure that people are treated and are able to, treated fairly and as human-centered, and think about how people engage in the system. So those are our three big pieces.
Great, and we will dig into many of those more. Let's go next to Karen Aronson. Karen, can you share what, from A&D's perspective and yours, what you think are some of the key opportunities for this Farm Bill for addressing nutrition security?
Yes, hello everyone, and thanks. I'm so glad to be here this afternoon with all of you. I think first and foremost, we're joining with other anti-hunger programs, other health and nutrition programs to protect and strengthen SNAP. As was mentioned earlier, we need to defend that so that there aren't any losses or rollbacks. As the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, we have an array of Farm Bill priorities, and they include keeping strong investments in programs that guide diets toward the healthier, the dietary guidelines for Americans. And some of the ways we do that through SNAP education and through GusNIP, which has been mentioned. We also are working to keep strong investments in nutrition monitoring and agricultural research and human research. There are 8 human nutrition research centers across the United States. We also, as Ty mentioned, support nutrition security and health equity. We want to improve access to healthful and culturally appropriate foods and resources to prepare those foods. We want to create a diverse workforce and ensure that sound science and program evaluation is there so we know what's working, what needs to be improved. And we want to support initiatives that foster a healthful and sustainable food system. An example of working toward health equity is opening up the ability for Indigenous people to participate in both SNAP and the food distribution program on Indian reservations. Right now, many participants can participate in SNAP and the WIC program at the same time, but not in SNAP and the food distribution program on Indian reservations. So that's an example of moving toward equity, moving toward increased access. And another example, Ty also mentioned, moving from a Block granted limited amount of nutrition assistance for Puerto Rico and our territories, and toward equal access to a full SNAP program like we have here on the mainland.
Thank you, Karen. Sarah, I'll pass it on to you now. Do you want to share other opportunities that you see for this Farm Bill in addressing nutrition and food security?
Yeah, I'd love to, and just wanted to echo that I'm so delighted to be a part of this conversation today. I guess just for some context, the Center for Science in the Public Interest, or CSPI, is a consumer advocacy group that is advocating for a healthier and more equitable food system. And I would just elevate some of the points that the other panelists mentioned in terms of strengthening staff, making sure that those have increased access to the program, and just, I guess, would raise a few other points just to complement those points. I guess I would still have to say that increasing purchasing power for nutritious foods. So, a top priority is protecting and increasing that SNAP benefit. Even with the Thrifty Food Plan increase, the average household is still receiving less than $2 per person per meal per day. So, any threat to that is a threat to food and nutrition security. And would also underscore the importance of GusNIP. We know it's an effective program for increasing fruit and vegetable access, consumption, food and nutrition security. So increasing funding for equitable expansion of GusNIP in the Farm Bill so more households can afford fruits and vegetables, to me, is just a clear opportunity for improved nutrition security. I'd also highlight that I think the Farm Bill is an incredible opportunity to improve the healthfulness of the retail food environment. people can't make nutritious choices if they are unavailable and inaccessible. So stronger stocking standards would ensure there are more healthy foods available at SNAP authorized retailers, and healthy marketing research could help identify opportunities to leverage SNAP to create a healthier retail environment for all shoppers. I'd also build on the call for more food and nutrition security research. So the 2008 Farm Bill funded the Healthy Incentives Pilot, which really, was the cornerstone and provided the evidence for funding and scaling nutrition incentives in FINI and GUSNIP. And so this Farm Bill really has an opportunity to continue and expand that investment in state-based demonstration pilots across even more innovative opportunities to improve nutrition security. And would also call, here we are talking a lot about nutrition security, and we know USDA is working on establishing metrics and regular reporting for nutrition security, but including it in the Farm Bill would really make sure it gets done. And the last piece I'll just mention is increasing nutrition security within the charitable food system. So Jacqueline mentioned, the Emergency Food Assistance Program or TFAP and Farm to Food Bank programs, and think, increasing funding for both is incredibly important. And also comprehensive nutrition guidelines are currently absent from USDA food distribution programs. So requiring guidelines would help correct current nutritional quality disparities among USDA programs and ensure that charitable food systems are receiving health promoting and culturally appropriate food.
Well, there is lots to dig into. You all mentioned a lot of opportunities as well as challenges. And I usually ask this question last, but I'm going to just jump right in the beginning so that people are thinking about it as we talk in more detail about some of the opportunities to support nutrition security through the Farm Bill. How are ways that people who are listening in today who don't work in policy full-time, how can they get engaged and support some of the policies that you're talking about today? Maybe we'll go in reverse order. Sarah, you want to talk first? How could somebody who doesn't work in policy get involved, and should they get involved?
I guess to answer your last question first, definitely they should get involved. And so I guess we'll give maybe some more basic recommendations and pass it off to my panelists. But, I would say, as with any policy issue, contact your members of Congress and tell them to support these policies. That as your constituent, you want them to support healthy food access, nutrition security research, healthy retail in this upcoming Farm Bill. I would also shamelessly plug that by following CSPI on social and joining our listserv, we'll be sharing Farm Bill advocacy opportunities as they become available, as we're getting further into 2023, potentially 2024. So there will be opportunities for sign-on letters and action alerts, so you can get involved.
Karen?
Yes, I'm going to even step one step back further from Sarah and say, especially to the college students who are engaging today, is to not give up, but keep engaged in the process, and to figure out which district you live in, who represents you in Congress, who represents you, for the Farm Bill, it's who represents you in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. So even further back than that, just find that out. Also, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has social media on Twitter, and I think Christy has shared the website where people can go to take action. We have action alerts that come up from time to time. We have one active right now, and that website is there in the chat box. So encourage you. And then even just grow one thing this year that you hope to eat, so you can get a little bit of an idea of the risks of weather and enough rain and not enough rain, how challenging it can be just to grow one thing, and then see if you can translate on how that might translate to someone who grows a small farm of vegetables or a very large farm, and the risks that are inherent and the challenges that they face, because it is the Farm Bill and it's a nutrition bill, and we need the farmers for our food.
Hi, how can folks get involved?
So I actually was writing down Karen's point because that's something I should probably grow something and that I can eat. I don't do that well. My dad is really great. Anyway, I digress. So I think in addition to what other panelists have said as far as reaching out to your members, one piece that we think of around offense being a good defense too is just talking about to whoever you can about the impacts of hunger or when people eat healthy food. I think people kind of take for granted that people have access to food, that they have access to healthy food, they know what to purchase. So I think to really support the program specifically in the nutrition title is just constantly having everybody talk about all the benefits to food for SNAP. You know, SNAP has health outcomes, it has nutritional outcomes, it has outcomes for children. It helps seniors not have to make the tough decisions between food and rent. And we, you know, anyone talking about that, anyone having an op-ed, obviously writing to your members, anytime you could talk about the benefits of these programs, then people understand and feel a little different and feel connected, and they feel less likely to agree like, yeah, we could cut that, or, oh, that is a lot of money. But even if the nutrition title is a lot of money, it's 41 million people, right? And so it's probably going to cost a lot to help feed 41 million people. So I would, in addition to what everyone else has said, just continue to talk to anyone who will allow you about the importance of all these programs and just how critical it is for people to just have something as simple as food, and then even more healthy food that, you know, that has impacts on people's long-term outcomes.
And Jacqueline, you've been on the other side of this, of hearing from constituents. What would you say to our audience? Does it matter? Does their voice matter in this discussion? Do legislators listen?
Yeah, absolutely. It does matter. And it matters on multiple different levels. So absolutely, if you can have an opportunity to engage directly with a member of Congress via a fly-in or a visit, or inviting them to a facility that is participating in some sort of nutrition assistance program. Members of Congress love visiting food banks. If you have an audience to have conversations directly, that's certainly a great way to share some of the facts and realities about nutrition assistance with members directly. That has a tremendous impact. I would also say don't underestimate the relationship with staff. I know many times when folks reach out to engage directly with a member, they're disappointed if the member isn't available, and they are referred to a staff member that handles the issue. Those staff members are directly engaged in making recommendations to their bosses, and in many cases are doing the drafting, making vote recommendations. So establishing a good relationship with staff is very important as well. But I would also say don't underestimate the outreach via letters and calls into member offices. There is a tally that happens in every office of different issues that constituents are calling in on and making requests on. And I know in every congressional office I've worked in, those members see that directly. They know what their constituents are calling in on. They see those priority lists. So the volume of calls, letters, even short notes into offices, it absolutely makes a difference in members feeling that they're being responsive to their constituents.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced it so many times over the 30 years that I've worked in food and nutrition policy, where a vote really did come down to a constituent having reached out, a dentist talking, or somebody who runs a food bank, or just a concerned mom, in a grocery store talking to a staffer or to a member of Congress. That, oftentimes people feel like Washington is so far away, or they feel powerless, but they really can have an influence. And all of the organizations that are on here today help make it easier for people to get engaged. So choose somebody whose views you align with, and follow them, and send that tweet or email It does really make a difference. So, so Ty, the Thrifty Food Plan has come up a few times, and some people know it well, but others are not as familiar with the Thrifty Food Plan. Tell us a little bit about what's happened since the last Farm Bill with the Thrifty Food Plan and the impact that that's had on families and the resources available to them through SNAP.
Sure thing. Thanks, Margot. And also thanks, Jacqueline, for teeing it up a little bit in your remarks. So first, the Thrifty Food Plan, it's a market basket of food. And this cost represents the amount of money a household is estimated to need to purchase a nutritious diet. And it also assumes they take kind of significant steps to stretch their food budget. And so that's the basis for the SNAP benefit level. And SNAP benefit levels are based on household sizes. So the 2018 Farm Bill directed USDA to reevaluate the Thrifty Food Plan based on current food prices, food consumption data, consumer patterns, and dietary guidance. Before this reevaluation, the Thrifty Food Plan had only been adjusted for inflation for the last 40 years. So it was woefully out of date with current dietary guidelines, food consumption data, and just honestly how our how families cook and consume food nowadays. So as you can imagine, a lot has changed, even around nutritional science, what people eat since the 1970s. Today's scientific evidence really emphasizes the importance of eating more whole grains, leafy greens, green and orange vegetables, lean proteins, and seafood. And so this meant that the TFP had just become increasingly outdated and inadequate with the current economic realities that most low-income households face when trying to buy and prepare healthy foods. So that's why a piece of reason why SNAP benefits also often fell short for what families needed. So as a result of the revision, and this happened October of 2021, SNAP benefits were increased. And so under the revised Thrifty Food Plan, the average SNAP benefit is now about $6.10 per person per day instead of $4.75, which it would be without the increase. So still a modest benefit, right? But this modest benefit really had a meaningful increase to SNAP, and it lifted some 2.4, according to the center's estimates, lift some 2.4 million people, including 1 million children above the poverty line. So it decreased food insecurity for millions of households, and it still, obviously improves health and educational outcomes. So the small increase does a lot, was needed, and was overdue. And I think it's sometimes important to remind people about the actual benefit amount, right? Like what that really means, $6.10 per person per day. And so there's a lot of advocacy around, increasing that amount as well, like going from a Thrifty Food Plan, there's a low cost food plan, that's kind of the next step. And so benefits would be higher. And I think that's important. And our focus right now is protecting this, because I know we'll talk about kind of what that has meant around SNAP spending. So did I go further in your question?
No, that's
okay.
Great. There's a lot of political discussion
Right.
around the Thrifty Food Plan. I'm not sure before it was updated that many people had heard of it outside of the advocacy world. Why don't we talk a little bit about the politics of this and some of the pushback that we're hearing? I feel like in some ways, some members of Congress seemed surprised that the Thrifty Food Plan was updated, even though it was asked for in the last Farm Bill. But I think, we're hearing a lot of political discussion around the Thrifty food plan. And, is it mostly about money? Is it just because the benefit level has gone up? And what is the threat to the SNAP benefit in this Farm Bill?
Okay.
Or Ty, kick us off.
Oh, sorry. Was that what I'm going? And then
Go.
So there's a few pieces there. So SNAP spending did increase, right? But there's a few reasons. So first, just like stepping back, there was a whole pandemic, right? And so a part of that was USDA, Congress immediately responded, and they pushed everyone's SNAP benefit amounts to the maximum for their household size. And we call these emergency allotments. So those happened in 2021. They actually just ended in the, all states in February. So that was one big reason, is because Congress made a decision to help slow down like maybe massive food insecurity by pushing everyone on SNAP to the highest benefit amount. Then most recently, as we all see around food inflation prices are pretty high. So every year SNAP benefits are increased based on inflation, cost of living. So there was actually a pretty significant bump in SNAP benefits just based on inflation, as well as participation rates, because we're in a pandemic. I guess it depends if we're still in it or not. And so more people are on the program, and SNAP is a program that responds to need. More people need benefits, the program expands, more people are eligible, more people get on. So there's some really good reasons why SNAP spending has increased. But based on CBO projections, we see that SNAP spending is going to go down. Those huge the huge amount that it costs for the emergency allotments all needed ended in February. So we're going to see a reduction in the SNAP baseline, as well as the participation rates. As participation rates go down, the cost to SNAP will go down. So there's that. Now, the Thrifty Food Plan, that revision was needed. It was overdue and it was directed. So we're going to still have that in the baseline, and that'll still be a cost, because that's actually what families need to purchase a healthy diet. And so the politics of it is about cost. And Jacqueline talked about it. The farm bill, if they're saying 80% of it is SNAP, it feels like, is it a farm bill, or is it a food bill, or is it a safety net bill, or is it a nutrition, all of these words. But I think what is important to think about is, first, SNAP spending will go down, but it's not a finite amount, right? It doesn't mean that because SNAP got bigger, farmers didn't have crop subsidies or anything they need. Like we shouldn't feel like there's a zero-sum game. It's either or, and understanding that SNAP, purchasing food that farmers grow in grocery stores that create jobs in the communities, SNAP also helps stimulate the economy. And there's a lot of evidence about how much SNAP stimulates the economy. So, there is politics to it. It is mostly about cost, right? And yes, if you look at SNAP in comparison to the other programs, you're like, whoa, but 41 million people, it feeds people, it also stimulates the economy, and it's going to respond to need as it should have. And also when need is less, the spending is going to go down. And CBO has projected that SNAP spending will go down. I know that was a lot, but it's because I feel very defensive about SNAP.
Well, and when there's all this talk about, the high cost of SNAP, when you think about it as, just a little over $6 per,
which is a carton of eggs, a dozen eggs at this point is $4 or something. Anyway, okay.
No, it's not a lot of money. Jacqueline?
Yeah, I did. And I do think that this is a really important point because I think over the next however many months it takes to complete the Farm Bill, there will be a lot of talk about this 85-ish% of money that is going to nutrition assistance. And I do think reminding anyone who ever mentions that stat or figure, how many people that 85% serves versus how many people are being served on the other side, not in a confrontational way, because there's very good reasons to support and provide some of the assistance that are in programs that are in the Farm Bill. But it is a much smaller number of people that are represented by the 15%. And while I was on the committee, we had done some educational programming with some commodity groups that were interested in learning more about nutrition assistance. And some of them were shocked to hear how small the benefit actually was, what some of the income requirements were, what some of the tests were that individuals had to meet in order to receive the nutrition assistance. So sometimes that information sharing and, in addition to the $6 approximately a day, the annualized amount, sometimes when you're talking to farm groups, they think an annualized amount just in terms of some of their thresholds and caps. There's sometimes an opportunity when you have a welcome ear to share some of those realities about what the programs actually really provide and how difficult it is to meet the thresholds you need to get that assistance. That sometimes makes people understand just a bit more about what that 85% represents.
Yeah. Sarah, I'm going to go back to something that you mentioned about the retail environment. How does the retail environment make it more challenging for low income and really for all families to eat well? And what are the opportunities to address that through the Farm Bill?
Yeah, thank you, Margot. You're right. I started speaking about this a little bit in the overview, but I'm happy to dive in a little deeper. I would say first, just to underscore, the importance of the grocery stores and food retailers' role in determining what we eat, that 3/4 of Americans' calories come from food retailers. And also food retailers play a critical role in SNAP. There's nearly 250,000 participating SNAP authorized retailers across the country, and the billions of dollars that they receive and redeem SNAP benefits make up more than 10% of total food retailer sales. So a quite significant amount. But I would say, in my opinion, that unfortunately widespread retailer participation does not translate into widespread healthy food availability or accessibility. So to, I guess, first address healthy food availability, we're advocating for stronger stocking standards. And the goal of stocking standards really is to increase the number of food items and overall nutritional content of foods available at SNAP retailers. So currently there are stocking standards. USDA does require retailers to stock a few varieties of food across 4 staple food categories. And while most SNAP benefits are redeemed at supermarkets and superstores that easily meet these stocking standards, nearly half of SNAP authorized retailers are convenience stores that have limited healthy food items compared to larger retailers. And there are nutrition equity implications here, because this limited healthy food availability disproportionately impacts African American and Native American SNAP participants as they spend more of their benefits at smaller retailers relative to white SNAP participants. So to this end, for this Farm Bill, CSPI is recommending that Congress remove the appropriations rider that currently bars USDA from expanding this requirement, and that the Farm Bill increase stocking standards for SNAP authorized retailers, especially considering a greater depth of stock requirement for fruits and vegetables, given their high nutrient content and high retailer feasibility for implementation. I also wanted to bring up, because the goal is not to have retailers drop out of the program. So to avoid these unintended consequences, it's really important that there's an adequate waiver to allow smaller retailers to be able to adopt these new standards, and that USDA should really be providing technical assistance and grants to assist with smaller retailer sourcing, stocking, and marketing of staple foods. And I also wanted to mention, in addition to healthy food availability, it's really, there's an opportunity to make healthier choices easier. And for this, we're really recommending an investment in a healthy marketing research pilot. It may be no surprise to some, including Margot, that food and beverage manufacturers pay retailers a lot of money to place their products in prominent places throughout stores. They dictate the retail environment through cooperative marketing agreements that disproportionately market unhealthy items. You may be familiar that most retailers have one produce section, but there are sugary drinks placed in an average of 30 different locations throughout the store, in addition to the beverage aisle. And we know that promotions work. Both unhealthy and healthy product sales increase when these items are placed at checkout, on end caps, and at front of store. So to better understand opportunities to leverage SNAP to create a healthier retail environment, we recommend the Farm Bill invest in a research pilot that implements innovative marketing strategies like product placement and promotions to increase purchases of healthful foods in SNAP authorized retailers. Hopefully this would give us a better understanding of impacts on food and nutrition security, food purchases and consumption, and retailer feasibility and economic impact.
And so what we're talking about, oftentimes when people talk about responsibility around healthy eating and SNAP, they're blaming it on the participant, but this is really looking at the retailer and their responsibility and trying to look at what the impact is of their behavior on making it more challenging for families to eat well. I know I was horrified to learn when from some retailers that they're promoting more unhealthy food in lower income neighborhoods, or that they're running certain promotions during SNAP issuance, especially to target people as they're getting SNAP benefits, pushing more and more unhealthy foods. And so I think when we're talking about healthy eating, we should not only be, groups like CSPI are not only talking about nutrition education, but also about asking retailers to support healthy eating in a wide variety of ways that are making it easier for all families, or actually making it less difficult for families.
I totally agree, Margot. The onus should not be on the individual currently when they're bombarded with unhealthy choices, but really they should be provided with an environment in which healthier choices are easier.
And so pilots would help to inform the next farm bill or policy going forward. Karen, what about education and research? You mentioned both of those in your opening comments. Are there some unique opportunities or some important opportunities around, maybe we'll start with nutrition education and then go to research? Sarah just mentioned one area of research, but what do we need to do there to strengthen nutrition security?
Well, I want to be sure to speak up for SNAP education. It's the nutrition education and promotion arm. And through SNAP education, it offers education and social marketing, supporting those environmental changes that Sarah was talking about. And these are evidence-based. And so if you think about that old proverb or adage that giving someone a fish or then teaching someone to fish, the SNAP ed helps to teach a family to fish and helps make sure that there are ponds available. So, and then when we're talking about the small amount of money here, Congress has only set aside about $5.50 over the course of a year for each person who participates in SNAP. So the folks who are running those programs would love to see that investment would increase through the Farm Bill or another way. And when we can help guide people toward more healthful diets and reach people in their communities and changing that environment, helping them to make good choices and know how to prepare the foods, it's really paying off with some strong evidence that SNAP education works, like decreasing new cases of overweight among elementary children who have participated in the program, helping people eat more fruits and vegetables. So keeping the SNAP education funded adequately can be accomplished through the Farm Bill as well. And then when it comes to research does a lot to help us make all kinds of decisions at the federal government level around food safety, around food labeling, the fortification of vitamins and minerals that we add to food, and the dietary guidelines for all the federal nutrition programs. So through funding research, we help improve our whole food system and food supply in those ways.
We have a question that goes back to from one of the listeners that goes back to our discussion about how people can get engaged, and someone's asking, do you have stock language for supporting the Farm Bill provisions that you've talked about that they can access, and how can they most easily access? I know we talked about this some, but let's just go back to that in a little more detail in answer to this question.
Well, I'll chime in with a key message of a lot of the groups this year is protect and strengthen SNAP. So that's pretty easy to remember. So even if you can talk about that and why it's important and how we can do that, that's one way. And then in a moment when I'm done talking, I'll type a web address to connect with our Action Center. Right now, there's an action alert to try to push back on the current proposal that's coming through the House of Representatives to vote no on the Limit, Save, Grow Act, which could lessen or take some SNAP benefits away from some people.
So we don't have on our website like call to action. So I would refer people to Feeding America's website or the Food Research and Action Center FRAC, which I can put in the chat. But also if you all reach out to me directly, we can have some, that's just not something we put on our page, but we definitely have talking points both on protect and strengthen SNAP or defend SNAP, as well as like if you're interested in particular areas. But we don't have a readily available spot, but we're usually aligned with the other national anti-hunger organizations. So I can put those in the chat.
Yeah, and groups like SNAP, CSPI, A&D make it really easy for you. You can go to their action center. They'll tell you who your member of Congress and who your senators are, and you can email or tweet or, reach out to your legislators from there, and they'll provide model language. So I think following organizations with whom you feel aligned is a really good way of getting engaged. They'll also, send you updates as things are happening. And if you're following the Center on Budget on Twitter right now, you'll see a lot of discussion about debt ceiling and, the talks about cutting SNAP related to the debt ceiling. And it's a great way to keep informed about when it's an important time to act. Ty, going back to some of your discussion, for as impactful as SNAP is and how much is spent on SNAP, it's really quite striking how many people are still excluded from access to SNAP. As I was reading your testimony, many college students, veterans, seniors, active duty military, people who have, paid their debt to society, people, I think, in the territories has come up today. What are some of the gaps to access that are likely to be addressed in this farm bill? What do you think are some of the key priorities there in addressing it? Making sure that all people have access to this resource.
Right. So I think there will be priority. We'll see what happens, right? Whether we can get some of this. But I think there's a couple of pieces to the gaps. And one is the policy or the rules. And then a piece of it is just like confusion around eligibility and the programs and access. And then I still think there's a big piece of stigma. We still run into people who are eligible, and specifically when thinking about seniors and older adults that are eligible, but the issue there is stigma or confusion about the program. So there's, to me, like different layers. And when we think about the policies or the rules, obviously that's what could change in the Farm Bill. A few of those that are big that, we'll see if we get movement, you kind of alluded to a little bit. So there's basically a time limit for adults who are either unemployed or underemployed, like not working up to 80 hours a month. They only can get SNAP for 3 months out of a 3-year period. That rule, there's been lots of research. It doesn't show to actually help people when you take food away in order for them to find a job. It actually just takes food away. It doesn't help them get a job. Who knew? And then there's the individuals with felony drug convictions. They're not eligible. While some states are able to opt out of that rule, it's just an old rule tied to 96, around 1996. We have very different views on criminal justice and how to successfully reintegrate people into society. And we also know that disproportionately impacts communities of color. And as we talked about so it's Puerto Rico, but there's other territories. So Northern Marinara Islands is also another that's subject to a block grant. And so these are places with high food insecurity. They're a territory of the United States, but they do not have access to SNAP. you all brought up, I think Karen brought up FDIPR. So for the reservations, they can get either SNAP or FDIPR. So there's that. I mean, there's so many things, and all of this could be changed. So college students, sorry, that's a big chunk during the pandemic there. So there's a rule that anyone participating in school over part-time, if they don't have children or working, they're not eligible for SNAP. That rule was relaxed during the pandemic. It's coming back into effect in July. So there will be a lot of college students who were eligible who will no longer be eligible. So that's a huge group, especially as we know about college hunger. So those are the big, so that's policy, right? So a lot of that is federal. Some states, there is some state flexibility, but a lot of that is federal. So we hope that there could be changes in the Farm Bill. But like I said, there's still a lot of confusion just about eligibility, how to apply, where to go, and the stigma. I think that people assume it's really easy to get SNAP, and it's not. There's a lot of verification. There's a lot of interviews. There's a constant renewal. So just really the confusion around eligibility and access and how people are cut off, and then people just not wanting to be lumped in a box of how politicians use the words undeserving, how they talk about people who encounter the system. Some people just rather not. So those are the big, to me, gaps.
Mm-hmm. Jacqueline, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers, challenges to getting a farm bill done? I don't know, generally or this time around? And are there ways we can help address those? Some of those oftentimes to me seem like such big picture politics, but what are some of those key challenges this time around?
Well, the Farm Bill really does take a coalition. And part of the reason the 12 different titles of the Farm Bill are helpful is because they speak to a lot of different constituencies that help to produce the votes that are necessary to get the bill through the House and the Senate. And when you think about even just the demographics and geographic preferences and perspectives of the House and Senate, you need a bill that is fairly diverse and reflects the views of lots of different places, ranging from New York City to small town in Nebraska to mid-sized city in Michigan to the Central Valley of California. Those are all very different constituencies that members are taking into account when looking at bills. But that's also the strength of the Farm Bill, because there are pieces that speak to a lot of different members. I think some of the biggest challenges this time around are the differences in perspectives on where the Farm Bill funding should go. So there's sort of two big components that will probably get a lot of attention and discussions as a part of this Farm Bill. One is the one we are talking about right now with the funding for nutrition assistance, what rules should be in place for individuals and families to access that nutrition assistance, what the size and scope of the SNAP program should be. There's already been a good amount of conversation about the Thrifty Food Plan update and how it was done and how different members feel. And there are some very strong feelings on both sides on whether that update is reflective of where SNAP benefits should be. I think the other would be the Inflation Reduction Act, which included a good amount of funding specifically for climate-related initiatives, programs that are funded in the conservation and forestry title and rural development titles of the Farm Bill, to address everything from clean energy to land-based conservation, that big investment that we make in trying to make sure that farmers have the resources they need to take care of our land, water, and air, protecting forests and trying to make sure we do things like some urban forestry and tree cover and all sorts of different things. That was all a part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And for some of the folks that were not supportive of the Inflation Reduction Act or have concerns about climate-related practices, they'd like to see the money go elsewhere. And I think that will be a big conversation point as some members that represent farmers who are looking at prices and have concerns about the safety net for farmers. There's there's a resource crunch. So the Farm Bill is sort of a closed system, and funds usually come from within the Farm Bill to fund other parts of the Farm Bill. So there are members that are looking at both the Inflation Reduction Act and SNAP as places to get resources for other programs that they would like to increase funds for. And of course, many members who are very supportive of SNAP and some of those programs that fund conservation practices don't want to see those funds shifted to other places. So I think that will be sort of the central question of this Farm Bill. What resources are available and where should they be allocated?
Money, money, and money.
And that's not really a new question for the Farm Bill, just sort of new considerations to take into account on what that might look like.
Yeah, well, thank you to all of the panelists for sharing your thoughts, your expertise, your wisdom with us today. Thank you to American University's Department of Health Studies and our department chair, Dr. Schnelling, for hosting the discussion here today. You know, I would just go back to find one thing today for the listeners that some issue that came up today that you care about, that you would like to get involved with. Find an organization that's working on it, tweet at your member of Congress, email your senators, share information on your social media, however you usually communicate with friends and family and colleagues. Your voice really does matter. And it's so important to protect what we have, but also to continue to push forward that food insecurity, nutrition insecurity, healthy eating is so difficult still in the United States today. And there's much more we need to be moving forward on. And there's some opportunities here. And these organizations and individuals who are here with us today are key leaders in this advocacy. And we need to have their back and support them and others who are working on the Farm Bill. So thank you all for being here today, the listeners, the panelists. And for those of you who didn't hear everything or want to listen again, there'll be a recording sent out. That could be another way to get involved. Share that on your social media for others to learn about the Farm Bill. It can sound wonky, Farm Bill, but it really does impact the lives of so many tens of millions of Americans every single day. So thank you all. And the conversation will continue.
Thank you.
Thanks, Margot.
Thank you.